It is Springfield's Morning News. A lot of choices on those ballots for the June 28th primary, and believe it or not, but early voting is underway. You've got choices for governor, you've got choices for state reps, you've got choices all up and down, but it's a party ballot, so you can't pull a Republican ballot and expect to vote for Democrats. You can't pull a Democrat ballot and expect to vote for Republicans. So if you do pull the Democrat ballot, you're going to get a lot of choices for Secretary of State. And one of those choices joining us now here on WMAY, David Moore. David, let's try this again. How are you doing out there? Good morning.
I'm hoping you can hear me this time.
I can hear you. All right.
Okay.
It's good that technology is working with us this morning. So, David, let's start by telling people who you are and why you want to run for Secretary of State.
Thank you so much. Real quick, at the time that we have, I'm David Moore. I came up in Chicago, started out, I'm a man of faith. I'm raised in the church under the late, great Reverend Dr. Clay Evans, and I'm a deacon at my church. I was raised in the public housing projects of Chicago until I turned 11, and my uncle wanted to give us, and my aunt wanted to give us a better chance at life, so they moved us to the Inglewood community, and that's why I began to do public service. I was already serving in the church. I went on to Simeon High School, where I graduated, and went to Western Illinois University, where I had to do a degree in accounting and operations management. That's why I learned to love Illinois. I got to spend time in Springfield, Galesburg, and all those surrounding areas because I was not only an RA, but I was a part of student government at Western Illinois University and got to work with a number of different and diverse people across this state, and that's why I learned to love Illinois. I came back. I worked for Fortune 500 companies, including Ralston Purina in the Quad Cities, and then Avery Dennison Corporation and the Clorox Company near the Chicago area, and went to the public side as an accountant for the Department of Aviation, and then eventually worked for the Board of Review of Tax Appeals before running for alderman of the ward in which I grew up in. I'm in my 7th year as alderman, and just like my seat as alderman, what attracts me to the Secretary of State seat, it's truly a nonpartisan seat. You get to serve everybody, regardless of party, regardless of race, regardless of gender. It's a servant seat. And you'll hear me talk about the service of the Secretary of State, the business of the Secretary of State, and the responsibility of the Secretary of State. And more than anything, you all, it's important that this seat remain a servant seat and not go back to being a political seat like it once was when it was mired in corruption and scandal. That's why back in 1997, I'm the only one in this race who circulated petitions for Jesse White to get on the ballot and get elected, although he wasn't endorsed by the party. And I stood with him for that because we needed someone who was a servant. I want to make sure that there's transparency in all 20 departments at the Secretary of State's office. Most people only know the Secretary of State is driver services, but people don't know the Secretary of State is the state librarian. I want to make sure that we're getting grants, that we're putting building libraries like we just I broke ground with one in Galesburg. I want to do the same thing in places like Springfield, O'Fallon, and other areas so that people can get the same services that Chicago is getting. I want to make sure that we're keeping these fees low, giving discounts to seniors, but at the same time, while we're generating new revenues, cost-saving revenues that are not coming from the taxpayers, but coming from uninsured motorists that we're missing. I want to make sure that we use our libraries as community connectors, helping our returning citizens in every part of our state to do library build businesses program like they're doing in Gwinnett, Georgia. And I want to make sure that from the responsibility side that we are giving our young people access to the ballot, that we're protecting access to the ballot. And I want to create, I was the first one that's raised that says I'm going to create 122 youth engagement offices at every driving facilities throughout this state to giving our young people and young adults full-time internships to get them civically involved early so that they can get on the voting roll, so their voices can be heard, so they can continue to make a difference. And so I tell people Illinois does not deserve anything less. Illinois deserves more. David Moore for Secretary of State.
And we're talking with David Moore this morning with Springfield's Morning News. David, you've got a four-way race here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so 4 different individuals. One of them even shares your same last name.
Well, let me tell the truth about that, and so everybody will know, because I'm very transparent. It's really a 3-way race. And I can't prove who. One of them put the fourth. All you could do is circulate petitions to get on the ballot. That other person was put in to take votes away from me. They're not running. They haven't shown up anywhere. They haven't been anywhere. They just on the ballot, and it's a sad day in politics when they're still doing that. And that's the honest God truth.
So what are you going to do to, I mean, other than, of course, get your message out there through interviews and whatnot, and I see that you've had a recent forum of sorts, but what's going to set you apart from the likes of Alexi Giannoulias or of Anna Valencia or even Sidney Moore, who's also on the ballot?
Well, what already set us apart is ethics and integrity. It's important that we have ethics and integrity. And I'm the only one in this race who does not have an ethical issue. Both of them are coming up, and truth are coming out about the candidates. And my thing is, that's what separates me. I will be able to win the June primary on the Democratic ticket side because I do not have any ethical issues. And that's important when you're going into the Secretary of State's office, which deals with lobbyists and registrations, deals with securities. All those ethics matter. And if you don't have the integrity and ethics now, you won't have it when you get into that office. And so that's what separates me from my opponents. Also, other than being a true servant, a public servant is a person who does government work for money. I am a true servant and have served in my community, in this city, and this state since I was 11 years old. And it's about service for me. I'm more married to the purpose and not the position, and that's what separates me.
David Moore, he is a Democrat running for Secretary of State after longtime Secretary of State Jesse White announced last summer that he's not looking for another term. David, before we tell people how they can find out more information about you, your websites and whatnot, is Secretary of State Jesse White's term too much? Like, should there be like term limits, for instance, on how many terms a candidate can run for?
Well, when you talk about term limits are up to the voters. I think there should be term limits in leadership positions, like, speaker and all that, because that was inside people, not the voters selecting them. I truly believe that. But when it comes to elected officials, even as an alderman, we had one alderman, they only served one term because the people didn't like them. They voted them out. People, when they're tired of something, they will vote you out. And so that's our term limits, given the right and the power for people to vote. And when people vote, they vote people out that they don't want in office, and they keep people in office that they want there representing their interests.
David Moore with us on WMAY. Let's tell people how they can find out more information about you.
Absolutely. Please go to our website, www.moorforillinois.com. That's www.moreforillinois.com. Or you can call our office at 773-846-0289 and ask for any literature. We have people down in Springfield assisting us. I've been down there at least 4 times, really, since this race started last May. And so definitely we have support down there. And so you can get literature, you can get information. Just ask us about it and call us at 773-846-0289. Leave your information, and somebody will get you some information. And if you want to help us do phone banking there, we can get you a list of people to phone bank. So everybody's involved throughout the state, and I appreciate that.
David Moore, he is a Democrat running for Secretary of State. Greatly appreciate you taking the time this morning, and we may talk again before the June 28th primary, all right? Be safe out there.
I hope we do. It is
Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 W.